Hey guys, it's Mike here, and today I'm going to be reviewing The Disaster Artist, the newest film directed by and starring James Franco. Based on the novel of the same name, The Disaster Artist is the story of the making of The Room, the cult classic film that is considered the Citizen Kane of bad movies. The film also follows the tumultuous relationship between Greg Sestero, the writer of the novel, and Tommy Wiseau, the star and director of The Room. Now, I'm a big-time fan of The Room. I first saw it when it was airing on April Fools on Adult Swim. The first time I saw the movie, I walked in about halfway through, and there was no information on my guide about what it was, just that it kept playing on loop. However, I went on to discover that this was a recurring thing that happened every year. So the next year I waited for the film to restart and watched it in its entirety and saw just how truly terrible it really was. However, as it is the nature of this film, it's so bad that it becomes hilarious when watching and rewatching it. As a result, it garnered a big cult following and became what it is today. And when the Disaster Artist novel came out, I read it right away, and it really added new layers to the movie through discovering how insane the production was and more of who Tommy is as a person. So as someone who saw The Room and read The Disaster Artist, I went into this movie from two perspectives. How well does it capture the novel and story it's based on, and how well does the movie work simply as a movie, that someone who hasn't seen The Room or read the novel will view it? So how does this film hold up from those perspectives? Well, let me first get into the acting, which is probably what this film will be most remembered for. James Franco is great as Tommy Wiseau. He does a great job capturing him as a person, the way he talks, how he approaches things, and even his look. There are scenes in this movie where he looks almost exactly like Wiseau, especially when he has his sunglasses on, and his performance is one of the biggest driving factors of the movie. Tommy is a struggling actor who really doesn't seem to have a talent for the roles he's seeking out. He meets Greg, played by Dave Franco, James's brother. There's a very strange relationship between the two that verges on sexual, and they both end up living together. It's also around this time that they decide to make a movie called The Room. And James Franco excels as this odd and at times abusive director. In some scenes, Tommy will be seen as sympathetic. In the next, he could be downright villainous. However, I feel that some of the characterization of Tommy isn't totally accurate to what was happening in real life. Some things are made to seem like he did it for one reason when it likely happened for another, and there's no mention of some important things about his backstory or what he did when he wasn't acting with Greg. Maybe it was to better capture his mystery as a person or drive the narrative of his strange relationship with Greg, but it varies at times from the reality of what happened. Now, as for Dave Franco playing Greg Sestero, I wasn't the biggest fan. I can see it making sense that James would want to hire his brother for the natural connection they'd have on screen, and it would add more layers to the performance, but I don't know that he was really the best fit for the role. His performance is alright at times, but when he's trying to emulate Sestero's performance, it isn't really the level of James's Tommy. Also, Greg is another character who seems to have really been changed in some ways from the book. He seems a lot more supportive and enthusiastic about things than he likely was in real life. And so are his motivations for doing the movie and staying a part of it. But his performance isn't really that great or memorable. It's basically just passable. Seth Rogen is another actor who did a good job in this movie. He and James Franco often serve as a comedy duo with movies like Pineapple Express and The Interview, and it worked well for him to be in this movie. He's one of the standout parts of the film, serving as the script supervisor, and it's really entertaining seeing him react to the insanity of Tommy on the set of the film. And him pointing out how Tommy was recreating sets for things he could film at just outside the warehouse were some entertaining moments as well. Really, where this film best excels at is recreating scenes from The Room. Seeing Franco doing all these memorable moments such as, "You're tearing me apart, Lisa!" and the room trashing scenes were great. And as we're later shown, the recreations of the scenes are very meticulous and nearly identical for the most part. And it's interesting how these scenes came together and how some of them were shot under terrible conditions. Now, as for the negatives of the film, I'd have to say that this film film cut too much out of the novel. There's some important aspects of Tommy's life, his relationship with Greg, and how the film was potentially financed that are either skimmed over or cut out entirely. The film seemed more interested in capturing Tommy's dream for the film than really explaining why the film was so popular. At the beginning, for example, they have interviews with people saying how great and memorable The Room is, and when Greg first sees it, he says that Tommy's script for the film is great. It just feels like they're not really capturing how awful the film is, how many people making it knew that it was awful, and why it has the cult status that it does. Some of it is captured, but not really to the degree it could have been. So overall, I definitely like this movie, as Franco's performance of Wiseau is really good, and seeing how they recreated the film and the making of it is cool. However, I'm not sure that someone who knows basically nothing about The Room and didn't read the novel will really get it or enjoy it. It's certainly possible, and maybe for big fans of James Franco and Seth Rogen, but I'm not really sure about beyond that narrow audience. I'm going to give The Disaster Artist a 7 out of 10. Alright guys, so let me know your own thoughts down below about this movie. Did you like it? Did you see it? Are you a fan of The Room? And I guess what's your favorite scene from The Room? Let me know in the comments down below. And as I always say, stick around because there's a lot more to come in the future. Make sure to subscribe to this channel and enable notifications so you could see all of my content right away when it comes out.
Yes, and you'd better subscribe and enable those notifications.